All right, shalom, y'all. Welcome back, family. Part two. I told you I was going to bring you part two. So we're still dealing with Israel and American pragmatism. Now we're going to go off into Negro land, the map centered around 1729. And we're also going to give some sense as to what are some of the countries now today that make up what once was called Negro land in 1729. So you all can Google that map if you've never heard about it, if you've never seen it, okay? Thank you all for coming into the live, y'all. This is part two, like I told you. Earlier today when we came on, I didn't have time to get to this section, of the research. So I told you I would come back and I would give it to you a second time. So we're going to get off into that. And we're also going to get into the book from 1860, volume 33, talking about Southern Literary Messenger. And we're going to focus on the very first chapter. They open up with page 1, talking about the Negro races. Now, we're going to find that this individual throughout time that has been labeled and or called the Negro is different. He's not like all of the other melanated people. Something special. Everybody's not that individual. So when you hear folks saying, me no black, well, there's some truth, to that. Because they are not that people. Okay? Now, for some of them, it doesn't take away and or say they're not in the fold, of the children related to the seed of God. But when it comes to that individual who has been titled Negro of the family, everybody's not of that classification. Although it's a misnomer, but we're going to dig into it. We got 2 records of antiquity that we're going to look at. And this is part 2, you all, because earlier today, I didn't have time, to get to it for you. So I just tell you, tap the screen. That's how you show your support, for the live. That part doesn't cost anything. And share the live and repost the live. Okay, you all do that. Share the live, repost the live. You can also add it to your stories. So we're going to look at Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33. That book was out in 1860. And we're going to focus on the first chapter. I'm not going to be able to read all of the first chapter. I think I got about the first 5 pages that I may be able to give you, into that, where they are focused on the Negro races. And we're going to come to understand when it comes to the family of melanated people that this individual classified as the Negro is distinct and is different. We're also going to start out by looking at the Negro land map, dated 1729. And then we're going to look at which countries today within that region sort of make up what that map was in 1729. And we're also going to see where on that map they placed the kingdom of Judah on that map in Negro land. And we would want to understand why. Why would they do that? And what is the association between this kingdom of Judah and the Negro, which pours into the sense of American pragmatism, which looks at the deception between those that call themselves, Jews today, how they do not fit the description. Thank you all for coming into the live. I just say tap the screen. That's how you show, your support for the live. You all, that part, it doesn't cost you anything to do that part right there, right? So yeah, coming back with part 2, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna jump off into it. We're going to get right off into it. We're gonna start off with Negro Land, right? So here, all right, share the live, repost the live. I appreciate it. Negro Land, you all. This is a map. 1729, I believe. You can Google it. You can search it. It'll pull up. And I'm also going to tell you which countries now today are in that region, which once was called Negro Land. And then we're going to identify who is this Negro so we can even understand as it pertains to biblical writings who they are, because this term has been conflated. This term has been overused and overprocessed, but there's a hidden meaning within that terminology, although it's a misnomer. But it also goes to point out and show you that Netanyahu and his cronies, that these people that call themselves that people, that they're not who they say they are. They're flagrant imposters. They are the $5 Indians. They are what the $5 Indians to America, are. That's who they are with respect to the region of the Fertile Crescent. They're over there acting as if they're somebody they're not, only because they get a benefit from it. But when it came down to Negro Land, you can best believe they ain't look nothing like a Netanyahu. Always remember what the president of Egypt, Nasser, I think it was Gabriel Nasser, when he said, they left such a dark-complected people and they came back so pale. Like, what in the world happened? Okay? And as you can see, in the image up above, Netanyahu about looking terrified. Because he's going to have to face, or they are going to have to answer to all of the lies that they've created throughout the world, and the American pragmatism and all of their deception. These people are going to have to answer to the corruption, the vast and mass corruption throughout the world. So I want to thank you all for coming into the live as we get started. Say tap the screen. That part doesn't cost anything. That's how you show your support for the live. Share the live and repost the live, okay? But here, talking about that map for Negro Land, you all. Negro Land stood below the Sahara Desert. So that also brings to my attention, we can't forget the Saharan slave trade, the Sahara slave trade. Because the Arabs, they don't get off the hook. They had their hand, in the sale of our people as well. Don't want to talk about it today. But still to this day, within Saudi Arabia and the UAE and over in that region, they're still plagued with acts of slavery today. That's what's expressed, but they deny it. Everybody's denying it. So who do you think they're enslaving? You think they're enslaving Arabs? You think they're enslaving the Europeans? No, they're still enslaving those Semitic people of the children of God. Now they get mixed in and confused, also with the Hamites, but or the Africans. But ultimately, they're looking for that people that have been scattered abroad, that have no home, no country. They're stateless. These people are being exploited, even by the Africans. Oh, see, we may not understand it from the standpoint of observation, but those people in that region, they know who is who, even from the phenotypes. The Africans aren't pushing Africans, into the bonds of slavery. They may have someone that look like them, but you can best believe that's not who they are. And this is why we're going to have this discussion, to even show there's a distinction between melanated people, from the Hamitic side to the Shemitic side. We've tried to make it as if we're all one, but we're not. But that one people of a dark-skinned race, they coined that particular people to be the Negro. This is the people that's highly sought after throughout the world, in conjunction with the other children, of the Most High that have been scattered abroad. So with the Negro land, it stood below the Sahara Desert, with the Atlantic Ocean to the west, Ethiopia to the east, and the Gulf of Guinea to the south. So Negro land is an archaic European cartographic term, talking about how they deal with maps. It encompasses much of modern day West Africa. Thank you all for coming into the live, right? Tap the screen. That part don't cost nothing. That's how you show your support for the live. You share the live and repost the live. I appreciate it. So that's modern day West Africa. So now Negro land back then, 1729, where the kingdom of Judah was placed inside of Negro land, and we'd have to understand, why was Judah associated with the Negro, and today he's associated with the European? Something wrong. It makes a state of Israel and a Netanyahu look foolish with their false facts and their systems within pragmatism. They set these things up just to make them look good, but through the true fire of scrutiny, it doesn't stand up. Oh, they refuse the fact that they have any Khazarian heritage, or, that the Akhenates are, within their, lineage, that they converted through Hyrcanus and Judas Maccabee. No, they want you to think they were born that way. But these are the lies that they teach and tell within pragmatism. But we're talking about right now Negro land. 1729, the map. Do go research it. Okay, West Africa. So specifically, this mid-1700s region stretched from the Atlantic Ocean eastward to the interior, covering modern, now we're looking at the modern countries that it covered: Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, and Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Northern Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Togo, and Benin. Now, that's where the kingdom of Judah was on the map. Today, it's considered a call Togo and Benin. But they placed the kingdom of Judah there. And this is in Negro land. So how you get Europeans out of Negro don't really add up, because although Netanyahu claimed to be a Jew and the state of Israel to be Jewish, they're European. They're not of the tribe of Judah based on the dark heritage features, the antiquity of them being identified as Negro. You didn't have two classifications for Judah being Negro and European. It don't work like that, you all. These are things that expose the lies that they've told over all these years. Right? Sierra Leone, Chad, and Cameroon. So those are all of the countries today that back then made up the map of 1729 for Negro land. Now, this is where they went and they hunted for the Negroes. This is where the Atlantic slave trade, and when you talk about the Sahara slave trade, this is the ground, and this is how they decided who were going to be the slaves. The Africans didn't sell Africans. The Arabs didn't sell the Arabs. They were all looking for that particular people. And that's who they grabbed up. And when the Europeans were coming in, they were looking for that same people. And we're going to get some information from the book that we're going to look at today from the 1860s as well. Thank you all for coming into the live. All right, so the Ivory Coast was often referred to as Upper Guinea or the Slave and Gold Coast on the map. 1729, where it says Negro land. The early 18th century map placed the Kingdom of Judah in West Africa. Now, they did that because the Kingdom of Judah was of the last kingdom to fall based on the children of Israel, because that other northern kingdom had already dispersed, had already been gone. So here you had the remnants of the Kingdom of Judah still placed and still, interacting with other nations and being spread out throughout that entire region. But you had a concentration of them in Negro land, and today was called Togo and Benin. But outside of that, they were spread out throughout the entire sense of that West African region through all of the countries we just named. Okay. Negro land, the 1729 map, the vast area was typically divided into the principal European settlements. You all, this is what they're doing today. They're settlers. They're moving in. They're occupying lands. They're still oppressing people. They were doing it then, and they are still doing it now. Not much has changed. And you have all these other nations, including the Arab nations, that are in cahoots with the American debauchery. They want to deny it, but look at Saudi Arabia. Look at those, Arab countries that have sold out. The writings say they are confederate against the people. The children of the Most High God for money. But we're talking about this place called Negro Land, this vast area throughout what was considered a call, or what's known to be today, West Africa, the Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Slave Coast. Because some folks still want to deny that an Atlantic slave trade ever happened, that the Saharan slave trade ever happened. And then who it happened to. Or they want you to think it was just Africans, just black people. No, this was a particular people that was sought after based on biblical writings and the prophecy to prevent them from ever becoming a nation again. So then you have Europeans like Netanyahu and his crew click up and say, we're going to steal their heritage. And we're now going to pursue ourselves throughout the world to be that people because they're not strong enough to refute our claims. And then we can get the help of our big wicked brother, America, to muscle us into the land, to destabilize the region. Not only can we eliminate the true kingdom of Israel and act as if we're their people, but we can also go in and disrupt the Muslims in that region. And we can have the entire world in wickedness, in corruption. We can do whatever we want to do. That's their inside conversation. We don't get to hear those conversations, but ultimately, even with their Greater Israel, project, it's only there to steal more land, oppress more people. While y'all sit back and you watch what they do in Lebanon and to Gaza, like Jordan, you'll be next. Saudi Arabia, you're going to get some too. If you look at the scope of their Greater Israel project, they're not done. They're out here, they're picking them off. They're taking them one at a time. And their philosophy is they go after the ones they feel they could easily defeat. That's their philosophy. See, that's what I read in the book that they have called The Jewish Mystic. That's why they stood out to take Gaza, because they felt that was an easy target. And they wouldn't dare walk up in on Iran like that. They waited until they had the muscle of America to deal with Iran. That's just the type of people that they are. That's their philosophy. And they pose and want to boast as if they're strong, as if they have some strength, but they know good and well if they did not have the muscle of the European Union behind them through Britain and America, that they ran them up out of that land a long time ago. So this vast area was typically divided into the principal European settlements, while distinguishing which belong to the settlers. See, they're still settlers today. When they go into Gaza, they're settlers, occupying lands. This is what they do. And before you know it, they'll be saying they're Palestinian. They're Gaza. They got right, to the land. All just so they can maintain this control. Oh, they don't care nothing about integrity. If they felt they were going to lose it and they had to become that people, they'll snatch that heritage too. Sacrifice some of their own to be a part, of that as well, or have them to come in or move into the area and we're going to set you up to be Palestinian. As long as you function within our mode and or our rule within the state of pragmatism that we put up, which belong to the settlers, such as England, Denmark, Holland, all of their European family and or buddies. All right, so let's see if I can get through the next section, which is the book from 1860, Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33. That first chapter, we're going to jump off into the Negro races. They opened the book up. And this is what they were talking about in the 1800s. And to me, it's interesting the way they can realize the difference within who's who. But today we have a hard time wrapping our head around it. To even come to realize that we may call ourselves here in the U.S. Black, African American. They've misnomered us as the Negro. But now that you make the connection that through records of antiquity, someone called the Negro was associated with the image of God according to a Roget's Thesaurus of 1834. And what's interesting about that resource is, thankfully I have it. And I saw where in the Roget's Thesaurus of 1834 that it said Negro, image of God. But today, if you try to Google it, they tell you it's not true. But a year ago, when you Googled it, it popped right up. And I had a friend of mine, he said, yeah, ChatGPT and AI said it don't exist. And I sent him a picture of the book. And all he could say was, wow. They told him they weren't making no thesauruses in 1834. I sent him a picture of the book, and I sent him where he can go buy the book if he wanted. So these are now the lies that they're trying to cover up. As we're coming to understand there's something about who they've coined this Negro. And he's now in America. At one time, he was associated with the map called Negro Land, which covers a vast area within West Africa. And the kingdom of Judah was placed on that map. And the Negroes are the Judeans, not the Africans or Hamites or the other people in other countries. The Negroes are specifically the Judeans. Vowed to never let them rise again. That's what the Confederation of Nations had come to understand, including the Arabs. They're part of that confederation according to what's written. But it's inevitable. They can't stop the rise of the children of the Most High God or the sons of God. They can't stop that. So here, we're going to jump off into it. The Negro races. It says the subject of this lecture is the Negro races. It is not of the institution of domestic slavery as it exists in southern states and elsewhere. This is in 1860, you all. But simply of the Negro races considered ethnologically. He says, I wish by tracing them through the Egyptian monuments. Now, we know through the Egyptian monuments that the Israelites were the slaves. Now, at that point in time, it was dealing with the entire prospect of the Israelites, but they focus on Judah and or the Negro, the darker race of that people, because Israel is a speckled bird. But we're going to understand more about who this Negro is and what is the association, even as we talk about Egypt being the seed of Ham and how Ham wasn't enslaving other Hamites. The Africans weren't enslaving Africans, although you have two dark-complected people, but they come from different progenitors. Through the Egyptian monuments and historic period to fix, as nearly as may be their place in the scale of animated beings. The difference of color is attended with difference of organization. It is a truth with anatomy has long since announced. So there's a bit of bigotry and or a little bit of something, with this guy that's actually writing this book, but let's hang in there and come to understand where he slipped up and he let the truth be known. So we're going to have to walk with his line, of thought for a minute, because he's focused on the fact that, the European race is the superior type race. And those of the Negroes, they are, the bottom of the barrel. They're nothing. Right? And let's look at how he tracks this and he points it out, through his research. And I can't deny the fact that within his research he's correct with a lot of what he's saying, but we have to understand why is this the position of this people? Why are we in this position, in America? So let's go. So he says, now we have the history of the Negro races for a long time, for at least 3,500 years. And indeed, in certain sense, for more than 4,000 years. For their existence unquestionably proof of their presence in Egypt under the 12th dynasty, extending back to the 23rd century before our area, talking about the Caucasians and or the Europeans. He says, but the earliest actual portraits of the race which we possess relate to the 17th century before Christ. And from this period, therefore, I prefer to date their history. Now, what's interesting is Christ is one that came from the tribe of Judah. So he would also be considered a Negro. But by then, they've already dealt with the iconoclasm and they've already, changed the face and the features, and, they've made, Christ to be blonde-haired and blue-eyed. And that's the image that, they push around the world. So we're reading from Southern Literary Messenger, 33rd volume, 1860. Southern Literary Messenger, 33rd volume. Okay. So it says, from this period, there is an abundance of monumental evidence bearing upon the illustration that, bearing upon and illustrating that history. beginning with the 17th century and extending through the whole monumental period. He says, we have innumerable delineations of the Negro in the mural paintings and sculptures. Sculptures of Egyptian templates and palaces. So how today, in having the image of these Negroes, of these Jews, of these Israelites, being a dark-raced people today, that you can accept them being Caucasian? How did they transfer from being the Shemitic Negro to a European Caucasian? How did that happen? Right? Also, we have to look at the paintings found in Russia, the vaults, and other catacombs, where they show you this people is a melanated and or dark complected people. So he says, complexion, features, expressions. Thank you all for coming into the live. I tell you, you tap the screen. That's how you show your support for the live. Share the live, repost the live. Okay? Tapping the screen, that part, it doesn't cost anything. Share the live to your story. We're reading from the book, what is it entitled? Hold on. Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33. That's what we're reading. Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33. 1860. We're focused on the chapter, The Negro Races. So complexion, features, expressions, he says these and every other attribute of the race, if modern archaeologists are to be credited, he says, are depicted precisely as we are accustomed to see them in our daily walks. So they're realizing the same Israelites that were on the wall in Egypt, enslaved in Egypt, in 1860, in America, he's saying, we see these same people in our daily walk. But yet, European folks get the claim that they Jews. And y'all try to act like these writings don't exist, although you try to bury them and make them hard to find. But they were writing about this stuff in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, identifying who that Negro is, who the children of Israel are in all of their multifacets, but they put a particular and or specific interest on that Negro, as they've identified him within the children of Israel. They consider that to be the prize. But he said, we see them in our daily walk. From 3,500 to 4,000 years, he said that history go to right now in our daily walk. We still see these people, but we don't call them Israelites. We don't call them Judean. We call them Negro. That transformed to color. That transformed to black. That transformed to African American. It just keeps transforming. These are all the misnomers. He said, indeed, we are told that we were to judge from the drawings alone. We might suppose them to have been delineated, but yesterday. So again, when you look at what's on the Egyptian walls, it's as if it was just yesterday in his time in the 1860s. He's saying this is the same people. He said, and moreover, as if to enforce the distinction of race by direct contrast, he said the Negro is placed side by side with the people of the purest Caucasian features. But what's recognized even in that time is then they were considered the kingdom of Edom, or Esau. Now they're European and Caucasian, and, they operate under different names and they hijack, different heritages. They do whatever they need to do to maintain their wicked corruption. So he says the first question, which naturally suggests itself in connection with these monumental evidences, is, can we glean anything from them illustrating the social position of the Negro in those remote ages? Y'all pay attention. Their position relatively to the other races in the time of the pharaohs. So basically, he's saying in that society, you had other nationalities of people that were held at a different stature. But those Negroes, those Israelites, they were held at the bottom. They were made slaves. Everybody else was seen differently. Everybody was against that one people. But it's written in the book that they will be confederate, that they will come together and say, let's make sure this nation of people never rise again. This book is from 1860, right? Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860. So we just got finished talking about how their position to the other races in the times, of Pharaoh was different. Everybody seemed to have some stature except for the Israelites, except for the Negroes. And this makes way for the Edomites, or this makes way for the Caucasians or the Europeans now today to jump in and say, we're Judean. We're the people of antiquity. But you overlook these records that the walls of the monument recorded them as being dark complected. It recorded the tribe of Judah being labeled as Negro. You have a map dated 1729 called Negro land, and the kingdom of Judah was in Negro land. What is that saying? That Caucasians were in Negro land? No. So now I want to read a definition centered around Ham, because Ham is the progenitor of the Egyptians, different than Shem being the progenitor of what they call the Negroes or the Judeans or the Israelites. Two different people, although dark and melanated. We have to pay attention to that part, because the Hamites had no love for those of Shem being the Israelites or the Negroes that were Israelites, the Judeans that they diminished their name by calling them the Negro. That helps to hide their nationality. No different than they do today as we call ourselves Black and African American, and they call you Indian and all these other things that, help to not allow you to connect to your heritage of antiquity. Thank you all for coming into the live. Share the live, repost the live. Y'all tap the screen. That part don't cost nothing. Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860. That's the book we're reading from today. The very first chapter, the Negro races. We tied that into our opening being the map of 1729 Negro land. which was, or which is today, that of West Africa. So here's the definition for Ham: the progenitor of the dark races. Y'all see that? Ham is the progenitor of the dark races. He says, but not the Negro. That's the distinguishable difference. We're not them. They're not us. We share the concept of being of the dark races, but we're not the same people. I'm just reading evidence-based academic research. I'm reading the definition, just to give some clarity that it's not a mistake that we are where we are and people treat us the way they treat us and they see us the way they see us. It's all a part of an ongoing plan throughout ages and generations. I know it seems unfathomable, but this has been happening for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. We've been on the run, sought after, dispersed. And why? Because we won't acknowledge our heritage as a people. We keep following after these other people. So the penalty that we pay through oppression and affliction is because we refuse to return to our state and status as a people with the law of life that we were given to be separate, to be different, to rule according to a higher standard within principle and righteousness. So because we won't accept it, we're being made to suffer through corruption, evil, and wickedness, because they're not built to deliver righteousness. The world was not made for them to handle through stewardship righteousness. For them, the world is to be run within corruption. As Job said in 9:24, it's in the hand of the wicked. So the progenitor of the dark races, that's Ham, not the Negro, but the Egyptians. See, so for all of y'all that think you're of the Egyptians and, that's a society and a civilization that existed for so long and, they're this and you're an Egyptian, and you got it confused. You can't be a Negro and an Egyptian. See, they sent us all to the same public schools and we've all been trapped within the same American pragmatism, and these are the things that we're looking to overcome. But you can't be a Negro and part of the Egyptian culture. In fact, according to these writings, if you acknowledge that you're Black, African American, or a Negro, according to these writings, the Egyptians look down on you. They looked or held you to the same position that the Europeans hold and or look at us today. Nothing. Not the Negroes, it said, but Egyptians, Ethiopians, Liberians, and the Canaanites. So Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, just not the Negro. The Negro is from Shem, totally separate line of people. That's who they sought after. Ecclesiasticus 29 and 19, and we're going to get back to Southern Literary Messenger, 33rd volume, 1860. Ecclesiasticus 29 and 16, because I want to tie some of these writings of biblical scripture into these writings of, 1860 just to show some relevance. He says, my son, keep the flower of thine age sound. Because he just got finished expressing Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negro, meaning we're separate people. So in Ecclesiasticus 29, 26 and 19, talking to that Negro, talking to that class of Israelites, the children of people, not Netanyahu and his corrupt cronies and, the imposters within is not real. But these are the real children of Israel that are still out there, spread abroad, dispersed throughout the diaspora. He says, my son, keep the flower of thine age sound, and give not thy strength to strangers. Give not thine strength to strangers. Basically saying, don't be chasing after these other people. Know who your people are and make yourself strong within your people. But what do? We go and chase after everybody else. We want to be like everybody else because they've conditioned us and told us to be like them. And for us to be like us, it means nothing. You're at the bottom of the barrel. In order to be accepted, we got to choose and look and or want to be like somebody else. He said, but don't give your strength to strangers. When thou hast gotten a fruitful possession through all the field, he says, sow it with thine own seed, trusting in the goodness of thy stock. We don't believe in our stock because we want to be of other people and other nations, and we're throwing it away. But our writings say, deal with your stock. Everybody dark-skinned is not of the same progenitor. It just said Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negro. Different. So we shouldn't be trying to be like them, chasing after them. We should want to build within our own stock. Now, somebody else is going to say, oh, you're dealing in racism. Oh, you're talking about color. Y'all pay attention to what this next Bible verse say. He says, so thy race. Now, this is what the Bible talks about, your race. Why they try to make you feel you shouldn't talk about your race. Although we've been diminished to a name like a Negro, Black, or African American, we're a great people. Our progenitor is of Shem, not Ham. We don't have anything to do with the Egyptians. We're not Ethiopian. We're not Canaanite. But we are dark-skinned, we are melanated, and they know who we are, but they call us Negro. In our writings, in our heritage, it tells us to stick with your race, build your stock. But see, the other nations being Confederate, and we're going to see it, we're going to get to it, I talked about it this morning. They've made a contract against themselves to make certain that we don't rise as a people. Because they know when we rise as a people, then their rule within having stewardship over the world, it ends. And they have to turn the reins over to us, because the writings say if we hearken to the voice of the Lord our God and live according to the law of life that was given to us, that we be placed over all the other nations. Now, folk don't want to hear that, but they love being under these corrupt Europeans. They're cool with that. But if you talk about changing the position of who's going to rule the world, and it sounds like the Negro is going to be in that seat, oh, hell no. Ain't no way. But here he says, so thy race which thou leave shall be magnified, having the confidence of their good descent. This is what's written, but they'll never read that to you in your Sunday school, seminary schools, none of the religions. They tell you don't talk about race. Jesus and God love everybody, but God said, deal with your race that it'll be magnified. Deal with your stock. We've been shown Ham is a progenitor of dark races, but not that Negro. So just because you see somebody black, as they say, me no black, me no black. As the African tell you, I ain't black. They're right. They're correct. They're not that person, that Negro, that people. These are the people that they've alienated. These are the people that they've persecuted throughout time. Their fathers and their foremothers throughout time have persecuted that Negro. Why? It's as if we have done it to ourselves because we keep chasing after them. Their laws, their policies, their procedures, their customs, their traditions. We have no confidence in our own seed, in our own stock. But he said, if we flip that around, come to recognize who we are, and we sow our seed around our race, it will magnify us. We'd have a great confidence now in who we are. But Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Singer, the Planned Parenthood woman, the one centered around the whole eugenics thing? Yeah, see, they had a plan. Got to stop them Negroes, got to stop them. Can't let them multiply. Can't let them be magnified. They'll take over. So going back to the book, Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860. He says, upon this point, I feel I am authorized to say that the proof are both abundant and conclusive. He says details here would be out of place. The result, as established by the authority to which the monumental evidence invariably tend, is that the social position of the Negro race in Egypt 3,500 years ago was substantially the same as it is now in the United States. Oh, the truth just slipped out. The truth just slipped out in this book from 1860. Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33. The truth just slipped out. He says it's a fact. They recognized then, but they deny it now today because they thought we wouldn't rise to the point of where now we can deal with a great sense of cogitation and that we can articulate our thoughts. They thought we were animals. But now they've left the record for us to decipher through and point out, as they now try to bury these things and use an internet to hide these things and tell you these things don't exist. But some of us, we got the receipts. We got the records. We got the books. But look at what he said. The social position of the Negro race in Egypt, talking about the Israelite, talking about that Judah in Egypt, we know those who, when you talk about those Egyptian writings, everybody know that those people were the Israelites. But he said that same people 35,000 years ago was substantially the same that is now in the United States. But Netanyahu and Donald Trump and all these other people try to make you think you crazy. You ain't nothing but black. You don't have no connection to no royal lineage and or no people of antiquity, and you're definitely not the sons of God based on biblical writings, because they made Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes. But according to this book, looking at the map of Negro land and how he's tracing the Negro race and the people who were on the wall, Jesus, whom you call that Hamashiach, that savior, that messenger, he was a Judean. He would have been considered a Negro. Not of the other dark races, according to Ham, not from that progenitor. But he slipped up and let that one out to say that same people that was enslaved in Egypt, they've been enslaved right here in America. And you know what? This is not the only book that talks about that. I just had to pull this one out because they opened up with the Negro races. They give you about 10 pages of it. I can't give you the whole, but you can go get the book. Southern Literary Messenger. They'll probably take the book off the internet and probably tell you it don't exist now. That's what they did with the 1834 Rosetta Thesaurus. They said don't exist. Negro image of God, that's made up. But I got the book. I've seen where it used to be on the internet. So when we start pointing these things out, they start shifting and scrubbing the internet so that it's not as ready available for you. And like I said, my friend, after I told him about the Rosetta Thesaurus and I had the conversation, he came back and he said, the internet said it doesn't exist. And I sent him the picture of the book. And all he could say was, wow. Then I showed him where he can get the book online if he wanted to. And all he could say was, wow. So if you're just dabbling in this, it's going to be easy to defeat your position and understanding. Thank you all for coming into the live. I say tap the screen. That part doesn't cost anything. That's how you show your support for the live. Share the live, repost the live. Thank you all. But look, I'll read that part one more time. Because he said details here would be out of place. Talking about this Negro who's so special. Don't even know the specialty within his quality because they've told him he is, she is nothing. And our problem is we keep trying to go after the other races, not understanding it said we should magnify our stock. And we have a particular protocol that we should go about doing it. But they use their resources and they use their persuasion to prevent us from standing on those things, because if we stand on those things, guess what, you all? There's a change in guard. They'd have to remove themselves from the seat of power. They understand if we were to connect as a nation of people in solidarity, that they'd have to give the authority back. This is why in the U.S. they say it's a threat to their national security for the Negro to organize, to position himself as a nation because they know who we are. They know what it means for us to have solidarity. And that's why they create the COINTELPRO, infiltrate the organizations, break up the homes, pollute our minds with corrupt entertainment. You have the people, of Is Not Real, dealing within music industry, but they deny it. They deny, they deny, they deny. They deny, they deny, they lie. As if they don't have anything to do with the corruption of our minds. But yet they walk around and say, stop the hate. You all stop the hate against us. And some of you say, oh, here's another one, crime victim again. But they remind you every year. They remind you every year. They talk every day now. It's October 7th, and I don't know what day they commemorate, the concept of the Holocaust, but they bring that up as a reminder. And you never say to them to stop playing the victim. But for us to talk about the oppression that we've gone through and we're still going through, you say, we're playing the victim. As we say, never again. And remember what happened. This is what they did. You say, oh, you're playing the victim, but they turn around and do the same thing and you applaud them. You're hypocrites. Details would be out of place. The result, as established by the best authority to which the monumental evidence invariably tend, is that the social position of the Negro race in Egypt, talking about Judah, in Egypt, talking about that Israelite that's still out there spread abroad and right here in America, but I'm going to let him say it. 3,500 years ago was substantially the same as it is now in the United States. This book was written in 1860. So they knew in 1860 that they had Judah in the United States, calling him the Negro, not African. He's not from Ham. He's not the progenitor. He's not from the progenitor of Ham. He's not Egyptian. He's not Ethiopian. So we need to understand the Negro is different. They know he's different. So it says, on the walls of Karnak Lexer, on Tentriah, and other tombs which stud the valley of the Nile, from Cairo to the cataracts, he says, are still to be seen the triumphal and religious processions of the early pharaohs. In these processions, Negroes frequently appear, who is different than the other dark races. This is a distinguishable individual, highly sought after. And whenever they do, always, I believe, in relation to inferiority to other races. Now, that should just piss you off. Because we've always been seen to them as inferior to other races because we're always being conquered. We're always being in captivity. We're always being enslaved. Throughout history, we've been chased throughout time. Why? Why is this happening? Why has this happened to our forefathers? Why is this happening to us? According to the records of antiquity, as a nation of people, we had a short, very short reign in earth based on the other civilizations within the seed of Ham, talking about the other civilizations, how long they had been able to rule. Well, we had a very short rule, which was 80 years. That's now today a lifespan for some people. But after that, they scrubbed our existence no different than they scrubbed the internet. These people are professional erasers. But this happens because we denounce our heritage. We denounce our law, our rule, our way. And we think they have something better to offer. So we've been chased throughout time and considered inferior to the other races, but yet we offer the best ingenuity. You all see, to the high level and or degree that we actually function, but they laugh at us. He says, inferior to other races, whether Caucasian, the European, Semitic, the Arab, or Nilotic, the African, with whom they are grouped. So when you group us with the European, the Arab, and the African, they all look at us like the gum on the bottom of their shoe. They have no respect for the lineage of our people. Right? So some folks will say, not all of them. Okay, I get it. But we're speaking from the standpoint of the society, the countries, the European Union, the United Nations. They don't care about the Negro. They know who we are. They know where we are, just like this man knew in 1860 when he pointed out within these writings, the Southern Literary Messenger, 33rd volume, 1860, that no different than we were seen on the walls of Egypt, that we're right here in America, the United States of America, walking amongst or enslaved amongst the Europeans. Is it an open secret now or something? He says, if there is any exception to this, he says, I'm not aware of it. The fact that we're inferior to the Caucasian, to the Arab, and to the Nilotic and or the African. He says, we're inferior. And if there's anything to the contrary, he says he's not aware of it because every time they look at us throughout history, we're being chased. We're being conquered. We're being captured. We're being enslaved. And we have a writing that tells us why these things are happening, but we continue to ignore what's written. Because we've been indoctrinated to believe otherwise because it benefits and or suit the other people, more specifically, the European nation, because they're in control of everything right now. It benefits them that we continue to ignore the writings of our heritage and the law that we should live by, not their policies, their procedures, their statutes, their customs, their traditions. We're supposed to separate ourselves from those things, but you all are begging now today to be a part of it, to your own demise. Don't even know it. Don't understand why you don't have any power and why you won't be able to build generational wealth, and why you will not have a black bank. Yeah, they may give you the face of a bank, but they still control it. The charter. Thank you all for coming into the live. He says, I'm not aware of it. There are some bound in chains, talking about our people. They are sometimes bound in chains and led as captives in the trains of victorious generals returning from war. See, we've been dealing with this for thousands of years, ages and generations. And this book from 1860 is one of the recordings. Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33, 1860. We're in the chapter, The Negro Races. 1860, they realized the Negroes that were on the walls of Egypt are the same Negroes in the United States of America. They identified this in 1860. They say these Negroes, when compared to the Caucasian, the European, the Semitic, the Arab, the Nilotic, the African, that they consider them to be inferior. And the reason being, he said, if they're not, he said, there's nothing I have to help me understand why. When I look at what's transpired with these people, every time I turn around, they're bound in chains. They're led captive. He says, returning from wars, talking about the generals, he says, at others, in the established relations of slavery. So when you talk about Africans selling Africans, Africans didn't sell Africans. Nilotic, Hamitic, Africans sold Negroes. The Shemite, the Arabs, they sold Negroes. The Caucasian, the European, they purchased Negro. Negroes were the commodity, still to this day. But one thing we want to look at based on 1860, in this book, he identified that Judah, from the monuments of Egypt on the wall, that dark-skinned person, not from Ham, the progenitor of the other dark races, is right here in America. But they try to make you think you're crazy. They want you to think they're the Judeans. They're the children of Israel. These are the lies that they tell. He said, the fact being, once again, you all, Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33, 1860. So the fact being unquestionable and is bearing in the highest degree important, it says strenuous efforts have been made to break it by force by attributing it not to any natural inferiority in the Negro type, but to bigotry and hostility of race, characteristic in such a particular manner of the ancient world. He said, we are told that the Negro was a stranger in Egypt. So he's like, there are some people that, are saying this is about bigotry and all this stuff. He was like, I don't see it. I don't get it. I don't have anything, to help him substantiate that. He said, we're told that the Negro was a stranger in Egypt. So this dark-skinned people up against another dark-skinned people were a stranger. But we saw within the writings, the children of Israel were always running down into Egypt. Now, this is how you know they could not be European and or pale race of people. But we're told the Negro was a stranger in Egypt. The Israelite was a stranger in Egypt. The Judean was a stranger in Egypt. An alien in a foreign land. And that in the ancient world, the alien was uniformly regarded as an enemy. So, Egypt, they saw us as an enemy then. In America, they see us as an enemy today. We're still considered a foreigner. They won't openly express it and or say it, but we're still considered as an alien. We're treated like that. And we're considered the enemy. Why do I say that? Because they're on record. No one has denounced the FBI. No one has denounced Hoover. No one has come up to say that's a mistake. They are wrong. When Hoover said, coming out of the FBI, that the greatest threat to national security is the Negroes. We can't let them come together. So if we're a threat, you all, they see us as the enemy. So they've devised plans, even within COINTELPRO and a number of these other operations that they have, to keep us from gaining a foot, to keep us from being established. That's why every time we had a rosewood, a greenwood, or any wood, or any type of thing going for ourselves, they had no problem coming in and smashing it up. But you all seem to think in this day and time that we can vote and we can have, this generational wealth. We're not going to have anything as long as we continue to be under their wing. We're a separate people being governed by another people. Their democracy is not set for us to rule. In fact, their democracy is the problem for why the world is in decay. And we think we can go in and we can save. Oh, we want to save them. We want to save their world. No, their world has to come to an end. Esau is the end of the world. Jacob is the beginning of the world. That world with being righteous, the world ending of corruption and wickedness is through these Europeans. That has to end. It's not real. They're not, of the ancient people, although they posture themselves to be. They're just like the rest of the Europeans. They moved in, they divide the land, and they call their brothers and their neighbors to come in and get another piece. And that's what I'm telling you about Gaza. Like the $5 Indian and how, they proclaim to be, the Jews, and they deny the fact that they converted through Hyrcanus and or John Maccabees. It's like in time, they'll be called some of their other European buddies in and say, hey, Say you're Palestinian. Say you're a Ghazian, so we can put you in this land. And we can have control over it. Their whole point and the purpose is to destabilize that region and gain control over it, to occupy the entire world for real. But uniformly, the Negro was regarded as an enemy and was most commonly reduced to slavery. This has been our history. We've dealt with the affliction and the oppression for over 4,000 years. Why? The reason being, we refuse to acknowledge that we're different, that we have a heritage, that we have a law. We want their law. We want their rule, but we have our own. He said, if you hearken unto me according to this, I'll put you on top. Gave us a taste of it for a measly 80 years. He said, but if you don't, hearken, if you don't hearken to these understandings and these writings, you're going to be on the bottom. They're going to chase you throughout the world. You're going to be slaves. They're going to say you're inferior. He said, commonly reduced to slavery. And that, the relation in which he appears on the monuments of the Nile, resulted from his position as an alien. That's how they deal with us here in America. We don't have no equal treatment. They talk about it through lip service, but we don't get that. The same way we were treated in Egypt through slavery, it's the same way we're treated in America. And the writing within this book, okay, it points out the same thing. The Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860, the man said, those Negroes that were on the wall in Egypt, he said, these are the same Negroes in the United States of America, in the same position, slavery, inferior, subservient, seen as alien. You all think we can be a part of their society. They never wanted us to be a part of their society, but we just want to muscle our way in, not understanding that's our downfall. Leave these people alone. Let them fall on their face. Let them destroy each other while we move on to righteous business. That's what we were called to do. Within righteousness, you all, corruption, evil, and wickedness, it can't survive. They understand this and they know this. They can't live according to righteousness. They don't know what that is. All they can do is what they do. We see it. We've seen it for over 4,000 years. What they're capable of. It's always the same. Decay. They are the cause for your global warming and these things, looking at the way they govern the world, the things that they allow to happen based on business, interest, and all they care about is getting some money, and they don't care who get hurt, in the way. So, reduced to slavery on the monuments resulted to them as being aliens, okay? He says, the answer to this argument is simple and conclusive. And I tell you all, if you've missed any of this and you think you want to go back to hear how we opened up about the Negro land and the map of 1729 and how that covers, West Africa, There's a link on my page. You look where it says Saturday 11, you click that link and we'll post this video there. So you subscribe to, that YouTube channel. Okay. It says, but the answer to this argument is simple and conclusive. He says, other foreign races, the Semitic being the Arab and the Caucasian being the European, are found upon the same monuments. So he's talking about in Egypt, you see the Arab, you see the European on these same monuments. He says delineated in vivid and truthful colors, meaning they weren't seen as slaves. They weren't treated like the Negro was treated. The Negro being that Israelite, the Negro being of Judah. Those other races and other people, the Egyptians treated them differently. But all, the European, the Arab, the Nilotic, the Africans, they all looked at that one called the Negro and they despised him. But he loved their dirty underwear. He wanted to be like the Arab. He wanted to be like the African. He wanted to be like the European. And for that, he suffered. He says, but there is the striking and remarkable difference between the Negro on one hand and the Semitic, meaning the Arab, and the Caucasian on the other hand, the European. He says that while the former appears in the relation of inferiority to the native races, the latter are always represented in relation to ascendancy and supremacy. So all the other races were accepted, even considered to be within supremacy, but when it came to that Negro, nobody gave him any respect. Look at Lamentations 4:18, and then we're going to come back to Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860, where it talks about the Negro races and how we opened up showing you the Negro land, the map from 1729. And today, which countries in West Africa, the vast area that it covered, and how on that map they placed the kingdom of Judah there with the Negroes. So if Judah are the Negroes and they're right here in America, that also tells you the one within the religion of Christianity is considered a Negro. That ain't changed, but they'll tell you, oh no, oh, it don't matter. But see, throughout history, this people have been despised. But through the religion, they want you to think, oh, now it's all good, but that's all a trick. Because they're now using that, the same heritage, acting within the impostorship to be the same people, as if something has changed now and they're in control of it. Everything is European now. It's all lies. But Lamentations 4:18, it says, they hunt our steps, that we cannot go into our streets. Our end is near. Our days are fulfilled. Our end is come. And that is because we keep chasing after these people. Our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of heaven. See, within this Southern Literary Messenger, he tells you all the other races were adhered and looked up to and thought to be within supremacy. But that Negro, everybody looked down on him. Everybody enslaved him. Everybody treated him like nothing. But yet Netanyahu and his folks want to act like that's them. They not that people. We are that people. And we're right here in the United States. And the guy just told you in this book from 1860. If you missed it, I'll post it on the YouTube channel. Just click the link within my bio, right under where it says Saturday at 11. Click that link, subscribe to the channel. After I'm done here, I'm going to put it up. You can go back, you can catch what you missed, share it with your families, share it with your friends. This is nothing but evidence-based academic research. Our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of heaven. They pursue us upon the mountains. This is what all the other nations did. The Semites being the Arabs, the Caucasians being the Europeans, the Nilotics being the Hamites, the Egyptians, and all the other dark races. They pursued us all throughout that map that they created, the Negro land. They pursued us and they enslaved us and they distributed us throughout the world. Our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of heaven. They pursue us upon the mountains and lay wait for us in the wilderness. This is history. This is what happened to the people. But the thing that we should try to understand is why. Why is this happening to this people? He says, the breath of our nostrils, the anointed of the Lord, was taken in their pits. Africans didn't sell Africans. They sold Negroes. Arabs didn't sell Arabs. They sold Negroes. The Europeans, they sold Negroes. They hunted our steppes. This is what's written. We were taken into their pits, of whom we said, under his shadow. See, we're now taken into captivity and we still love them. Being taken under his shadow, we shall live among the heathen. We still ain't learned our lesson. We're convincing ourselves, even through this oppression, to live among the heathen. That's what's happening right now today. As they're stripping the privileges of civil rights and voting rights, we're still trying to live among the heathen. Same thing, same people, same flawed mindset. We want generational wealth and we want to be successful, and we don't understand the thing that's holding us up is we can't let go of our oppressor. We feel like we must live under the shadow among this people in order to thrive, to survive, to live. Back to the book. Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33, 1860. He says, upon this point, the proofs are indisputable. From the earliest time, the Asiatic races which had immigrated into Egypt seem to have asserted not merely an equality with, but an ascendancy over the Aborigines. Over them. The Aborigines of the Nile. And so marked was this ascendancy that some have gone so far as to affirm. Okay? He says, and indeed, I am not sure that this is not the better opinion. He said, but that the highest caste in Egypt the king, the priest, the warrior caste, he says, were none of them aboriginal, but all of Asiatic origin. But when it came down to that Negro, they say, oh, they're above. They're above this people. He says, in this fact, we have a complete refutation of the idea that the relation of inferiority in which the Negro appears, he says, were the result of his position as an alien. So that aboriginal is considered an alien, not accepted. An alien for the other foreign races, contemporary with him. He says, and thus falling under the operation of the same law of race. And y'all say don't talk about race. But see, in 1860, they understood it. But now today, to maintain that control and, to keep the indoctrination going, they say, oh, we're all one people, equality for everybody. That's all lip service. We have to get away from this people, as he said, come out of her, my people. And I'm not saying go back to Africa, because there is no going back to Africa for us. Y'all forget they stole this land and called it Manifest Destiny? They don't have any records or treaties to support Manifest Destiny. They stole it. We just have to bring ourselves to recognize who we are as a people, and that we don't need to be under their shadow. This within the testimony and within the prophecy is our warning. These are the annals of that heritage that we've lost, that we spend so much money trying to understand and find. That history, that ancestry. Oh, but a number of you, you're too good to be, of this people. No problem. Because I know there are other progenitors out there, and everybody doesn't fit within this class of people. It's cool. So if you're not the Negro, I ain't talking to you. But you can't be a Negro and an Egyptian. We pointed that out to you based on the evidence-based academic research. These are two different people from two different progenitors. Yes, they're of the dark races, but they're not the same people. You can't be a Negro and be an Ethiopian. These are two different people. I know y'all love Africa and everything Africa, but something happened that really hasn't been talked about. But we're going to finish reading the Southern Literary Messenger, third volume. Was it 31st volume? I believe it is the 31st volume. I didn't mean to say 33rd. The 31st volume, 1860. In fact, let me make sure. Yeah, volume 33, 1860. Right? So he says, let me see where I was. Okay, he says, so true it is that races of men, and they just said, don't talk about race. Oh, you talking about your race? In the Bible, it said, focus on your race. But they never read that part to you in Christianity and Catholicism, in Judaism and Christianity. But I read the verse to you where he said, focus on your race, pour into your stock, into your seed, that you be magnified. They say, oh, don't talk like that. That's racism. I guess God was a racist then. It's written in a book that's respected, upheld, acknowledged, recognized. But that part you say, no, we don't recognize that. Jesus changed it. See, y'all love being lied to because you want to stay under the shadow of your oppressor. And you want to keep building him up to your own demise. Well, let's get back to the book. He says, so true it is, the races of men, like water, will find their own level and take that place in the scale of organizing being, of the social graduation for which the God of nature designed them. So here, now he's trying to say that the Negro was designed to be subservient, to be everybody's slave, to be everybody's doormat. I don't know if you agree with that. But this is how the other nations or people, they look at us. That's why everybody said, me no black, me no black. Oh, no, please don't call me black. Oh, no, me no Negro, me no, please don't call me that. They have been convinced that we're nothing but the excrement on the bottom of somebody's shoe. And some of you say, oh, I'm up here, I'm dispensing hate. I'm just reading a book from 1860, drawing the comparison with certain biblical scriptures to show what's happening right now today. Looking at a perspective within history that some of us may have never heard. But you so hurt and in your feelings, this sounds like racism to you. Truth sounds like racism. He says, of social order and of social graduation, of which, of the God of nature designed them, going back to where he's trying to say that the Negro was meant to be everybody's slave, everybody's doormat. Everybody can abuse the Negro. That's what God created him for. He says, since then is the result of monumental evidence. And here, on the time-worn temples and palaces of the Nile, which have withstood for so many thousands of years the rage of the elements and of man, and more destructive than the elements, we have the mute but truthful and unerring evidence of the inequality of the races of men. But yet, y'all want to act like we're all equal. And this is America, and we're all treated the same. Y'all need to stop telling them lies. The records of antiquity show it ain't never been we're all equal. And it ain't never gonna be we're all equal. Oh, they tell you that to make you feel good about something within yourself, that you may not strive to position yourself over them, but throughout time, the concept of inequality has always been. The issue is they don't want the Negro to rise to that position of leadership, because then the degree of inequality would shift. So all the other nations and races have worked within a confederacy to keep that Negro blocked and or down. It says that in the biblical writings. We find it in books of antiquity from the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. That's where you're going to find it. You're not going to find it within these most modernly written books. But they openly talk about these things in the books that were written in 16, 17, 1800. And this is one of them. Southern Literary Messenger. Volume 33. That's where I'm at. Yep, volume 33. 1860. All right, so what do we have? He says, since the monuments have been built, great have been the vicissitudes of Egyptian history. Oh, let me finish the line before that. I apologize. I skipped the line. He says, we have made mute but truthful, or we have the mute but truthful and unerring evidence of inequality of the races of men. He says, and the inferiority of the Negro to all those with whom he is found in contact with. It goes back to what I was saying. For ages and generations, they think we are weak. And they use and spend all of their money to keep us in a subservient position. And the Negro is not like the other people. He says, since those monuments have been built, as y'all love to talk about Egyptian civilization, the Egyptians oppressed you, your forefathers. If you call yourself a Negro, if you realize that you're of that lineage, if you're not of that lineage, don't worry. I'm not talking to you. Don't even involve yourself in the conversation. I'm talking to the ones that we've had our names taken. We've had our heritage scrubbed, right? We lost our culture. But yet we're right here in America and we've been identified as a Negro. That's the misnomer that was given to us. So they have a map from 1729 called Negro Land where they show how they chased us all through West Africa and the Sub-Saharan. And we have a man writing in a book from 1860 saying the same people, that Negro that was in Egypt is right here in America. He says, in succession, the Persian, because we had the Persian captivity, the Negroes as Judah, that southern kingdom, the Israelites, we had the Persian captivity. We had the Greek captivity, the Roman captivity. Even the Arabs had us in captivity, and we then started dealing with Islam and walked away from our own heritage. See, with every nationality we went to, we started trying to be like that people. That's why we don't have any power, because we're not being like the people upon whom we are. In succession, he says, the Persian, the Greek, the Roman, and the Arab have lorded it over the ancient land of the pharaohs, meaning they all had a chance to rule it. But when it come to the Negro, the Judean, the Israelite, they never had a chance to rule. They were always being ruled through all of those transitions, because we abandoned our heritage. As he said, honor your mother and father that your days be long in the land. But we dishonored our mother and father, meaning our heritage, our customs, our traditions, our law. We wanted to be like the Persians. We wanted to be like the Greeks. We wanted to be like the Romans. We wanted to be like the Arabs. So they ruled over us. We want to be like the Americans. So they rule over us. Some folks say, we hear the problem with what's the solution? That is the solution. Stop being like the other people. Separate your mindset. Come to understand your heritage and your nationality and live within those rules, those laws, those standards. That you can have unity as the people. Invest in your stock as it's written. That's a principle and or precept that we're supposed to live by. But we're made to invest everything we have into their stock. All the other people, all the other nationalities and all the other nations, because we don't even want to be ourselves. He says the cradle of human culture, he says the cradle of human culture and have erected during the period of their respective dominations, monuments commemorative of their conquest. Talking about the Greek, the Persian, the Roman, and the Arabs that have taken precedent, over that land, over those regions. He said, but all these, the Persian, the Greek, the Roman, the Arabian, have long since been scattered in the dust. While these monuments of the early pharaohs, older by thousands of years, but the one thing that happened in Egypt, he said they're scattered in the dust, but now the true Egyptians, are like scattered. And you now have Arabs that are in that land acting as if, they're the antiquity of the people that are in that land. And this is just, an unfortunate thing that we see transpiring. Where people come and they hijack, the heritage of other people. That's how a lot of people feel about Netanyahu and the state of Israel. They feel as if this people have gone about to hijack the heritage of another people. He said, while these monuments of the early pharaohs, older by 1,000 years than the oldest of them, still survive and lift aloft their history, their hoary head among the palm groves, to all appearances as enduring as the Libyan and Arabian hills from those quarries. He says they were hewn at least 4,000 years ago, bearing silent but irrefutable testimony to the social position of the Negro in that remote period, meaning all they know us as is slaves. So while I'm watching the world today deal with the oppression, deal with the atrocities, I'm just trying to say we've been dealing with it. So now that I see other nationalities such as the Palestinians going through it, I can relate and I can communicate, with them to say, I understand what you're going through. Because this has been happening to my lineage for over 4,000 years. But now that it's happening to you, I can sympathize with you. And I can work with you to even want to help to stop the oppression across the world to all people, because that's what wickedness produces. But it's like when it was happening to us, it's like nobody really cared. Nobody really dealt with anything or said nobody came to our rescue. But the thing that happened to us is now starting to happen to other nations and nationalities of people. And guess what? We stand to their rescue. And I know for a number of you, you're mad about that and you're saying, to heck with them. But we must stand, because this is what helps to position us also into a seat of authority. Even raising ourselves up, that we can overcome the oppression by also helping to liberate others from that oppression. They know it's on us. Oh, these people in America, they dread the fact that we open our eyes and we stand in solidarity, as they have said, don't let them Negroes join together. Do whatever you have to do to disrupt their meetings, their organizations, their leaders, COINTELPRO. It's written. It said if they do that, it's a threat to our national security. Because they understand, when we rise, when we stand up, it's a beacon of liberation to an entire world of oppression. Because we are, in these writings, the symbol of an oppressed people. But the prophecy says we'll overcome it. Thank you all for coming into the live. Share the live, repost the live, tap the screen. That's how you show your support for the live. That part doesn't cost you anything. So he says, where did I stop? All right. According to Hills, for at least 4,000 years ago, bearing the silent but irrefutable testimony. Okay, the Negro, okay, in that remote period. Then it says, passing from the monumental and, oh, by the way, you all, I'm reading out of the Southern Literary Messenger, the 33rd volume, 1860. First chapter, the Negro Races. We also started out with the map from 1729 Negro Land. If you missed any of this and you want to go back and get it, I think I told you. Click the link to the YouTube channel. You go up on my page right here on TikTok. You'll see where, right under Saturday at 11 a.m., click that link. It'll take you to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, and this video will be up there if you missed anything. Right? He says, passing from the monumental to the historic period, we obtain precisely the same result. From the walls of Egypt up until now, it's the same result. These Negroes been enslaved and chased and made subservient to everybody. The presence of the Negro in the ancient world is a fact, which meets us everywhere. These people have been oppressed throughout time. So while I say we see other nationalities and or people, coming into it today, we can sympathize with you. But you must understand, we've been dealing with this for ages and generations. So we're here to have that conversation and help understand how to stop it. But we also have to acknowledge that throughout the ages and throughout the generations, nobody came to our rescue, but we're not going to leave you lonely. We're going to assist, because it's our job to liberate the world from this oppression. You don't have anybody else to turn to. We don't have anybody else to turn to. But we have to turn away from the laws and the rules and the policies and the procedures of the oppressor. in order to be successful. And this is what they spend billions and trillions of dollars into, making certain we don't make that move. In fact, when you start talking about liberation and self-determination and reclaiming autonomy, that's when they start writing $1 million checks, looking to see who's going to sell out. And some of you so foolish, for the paper with the pictures of the slave masters on it, you say, oh, I'll take that $1 million check. I'm going to turn all them Negroes in and over and out, and I don't give a damn about them. Your own people. But I said earlier, wherever the sons of God are, wherever righteousness is, you have that Judas. But even you're in Judas, it's with the reward of the wicked. Your steps are measured. So do what you do. He says the Greek and the Roman writers make frequent mention of them. So the Greek and the Roman writers make frequent mention of them, talking about the Negro, talking about Judah. This is how you know Netanyahu and them can't be Judah. The Negroes are black, dark-skinned. That can't be a Netanyahu and his European comrades. They've hijacked the heritage. But the Greek and the Roman writers make frequent mention of them, the Negro, the Judean, because the northern kingdom had already fled. The southern kingdom was that last standing remnant of the children of Israel, the real children of Israel, not this fake stuff within the state of Israel, in what you call the Middle East, which is another European term. We should know it as the Fertile Crescent. But they make it the Middle East because that's where they want to come in. That's their stronghold to destabilize the region. So the Romans and the Greek make frequent mention of them. He says, we find them in Europe. What? You find the Negroes in Europe? What? For real? See, we're everywhere. But we're without power. And guess what? It's written within our annals that we will be spread out through all of these places. Scattered means no power. When you're scattered, you're like this. When you're together, you're like this. When you're scattered, you have no power. So we're everywhere, but without power. Easily to be overtaken and enslaved. And this is how we've been seen throughout history, because we won't stand on our own heritage. We keep trying to be like the other nations of people. We find them in Europe, Asia, and Africa. I thought they were Africans. But we just showed you. Ham, being the progenitor of the other dark races, it said, but not the Negro. I gave you the source for that. If you missed it, we'll put it up on the YouTube channel. When all of this is done, you can go back and you can get it if you want that resource. Look on my page, right under where it says Saturday, 11 a.m. Click that link. It'll take you there. Subscribe to the channel. Right? He says, at Thebes, Memphis, Carthage, Tyre, Antioch. These all sound like something in the Bible. Israelites, Negroes and Israelites. What? I thought they were a pale people. I thought they looked like Netanyahu. Something ain't right. In Antioch, Athens, and Rome. He says, not in large numbers. It is true. For there was no considerable demand for them. Everybody was just using them. He said Negro slavery was, in those times, excluded by white slavery to a great extent. He says it was the universal principle of international law in the ancient world that the captive taken in war was the slave of the captor. That's why they chased the Negroes all around, like, let's get them. They don't have no base. We've scattered them, so this is how we've become that slave throughout generation and throughout age. Everybody else, they learn to hang on their heritage or to hijack somebody else's heritage as a way to come together to have some strength. We ain't figured that part out yet. We still trying to be like everybody else, so we're in captivity, although you deny it because you got a good job. You making some money, you got some education. You say, I'm not in captivity. He says, the slave of the captor. And as war was the habitual state of the ancient nations, the slave markets of antiquity, he says, were glutted with a class of laborers altogether superior to the Negro. So that Negro was in that slave market. Everybody sought the Negro. He says, for this reason, Negroes were not numerous in Europe in ancient times. We were not numerous, but we were there. We were amongst the other dark races. They were there. Nor in the Middle Ages. We were not numerous in the Middle Ages. See, in the Middle Ages, the other dark nations were ruling. That's what they called the Dark Ages. That's when the Hamites, that's when the Africans were ruling. They called that the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, but we were there. We didn't have a system of power. We were working with some of these people, and some of us, no different than right here in America, we rise to certain positions, of status, but the people as a whole, no power. Some of us even had a seat of rulership like a Barack Obama in the United States of America, but no power. He said, we still meet with them frequently, sprinkled here and there over the surface of society. And y'all think they don't know who we are. And universally, I believe in relations of inferior to those with whom they are found. Meaning in this nation, in that nation, we're made inferior to these people because we don't stick to our heritage. We want to be American. We want to be Arabian. We want to be European. We want to be African. So for wherever we're found, we're inferior because we're not that people. And they will never accept us as their people. So your vain one vision of equality is just that. It's vain. We're not going to have no equality in America. There's going to be more oppression. He says, and not only of inferiority, but even more distinctly of slavery. But you all want to believe, just because you're walking around and you driving, that this is not a form of slavery. Y'all crazy as hell. It sure ain't liberation. If it ain't liberation, then it's captivity. But y'all say, we're not in captivity. We can go where we want to go. We can eat what we want to eat. You're just a richer slave. That's all. You're just a richer slave. That's all. Right? He says, upon this point, the proofs are full and clear. And we are at liberty to speak with confidence in respect to the monumental period. The proofs are all strong in the same direction that don't nobody give a damn about the Negro. Walk over him, walk over her, abuse their families, make them feel like they're a part of your society, of your organization, of your democracy. Let them be a Republican. Let them be a Democrat. But we're going to use them to serve our interest. They're inferior to us. He says, when the Negro races first made their appearance on the monuments of Egypt, and you all, this is the Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860. He says, it is the relation of slavery. When we appeared in Egypt, in the book, they said, we got to do something to this people. Otherwise, they're going to outnumber us. And I'll get to that part. But in relation to the Egyptians, our position was slavery. The Negro. Sometimes, and see, Negro, again, it's a misnomer to help disguise who and or what we're really talking about. They understood this back then. But the Negro is synonymous with the Judean. That's why they had the entire map of 1729 called Negro land. And they had the kingdom of Judah placed in the Negro land because the Judean is the Negro that's spread abroad. The entire family of the kingdom of the Israelites are spread abroad, but that Negro was the last one to be spread abroad. And he's the most significant one according to the writings because he's going to be responsible for the turnaround, the upliftment of humanity. I know it don't seem like it. He says, sometime indeed of captivity, but more commonly of established slavery. Captivity, slavery, like right now, you all don't see it as slavery, but it's captivity. You want to try to act like it ain't neither one, but you don't have liberation. You don't have your own society. You're promoting, at this point, the society of the European. Their democracy. He said this until we come down to our own times. He said, was therefore the universal status. Slaves. Slaves then, he says, when Karnak and Lexer were built, slaves in Europe, Asia, Africa, and America. This is the Negro, y'all. This is the Judean. This is the one who was on the walls of Egypt. You can't be a Negro and from the civilization and or the culture of Egyptian or Ethiopian. You just can't be that. Sorry that you've been confused and misled all these years to think that we're all the same people. We're not. But in all those places, historically, we are recognized to have been in captivity and or slavery to all these races and or nationalities of people. Let's see. He says slaves in Thebes and Memphis, Babylon, and Nineveh. Nineveh? That's where the Israelites were. Nineveh. The Negroes being of the tribes of the Israelite, being the Judean, he too was in Nineveh and Rome and Athens, at Carthage and Constantinople, at Havana and Richmond, slaves at all times. That's how they remember us. So for those of you that are going through this oppression now today, I feel your pain. But our people, we've been going through it. And I can tell you, we empathize or we sympathize. We sympathize with you. Right? He says, under all forms of government, slaves, in captivity, under every modification of society, under every conceivable combination of circumstance. Do you understand what I'm saying? Of all these circumstances, every conceivable combination, slavery seems to have been empathetically the history of his race or of this race. That's what we're saying. That's what we're pointing out. Thank you all for coming into the live. Right? I say share the live, repost the live. Tap the screen, you all. That part, that's not going to cost you nothing. Right? Okay. So, okay. He says, and who, thrusting himself into the divine councils, will undertake to say that slavery is not their doom. So they've identified for us that continuing to want to be like these other people and after these other nations, not looking to understand our heritage, our history, and our writings, that's going to be our doom. 1860, this was written. Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, first chapter in the book, The Negro Races. He says, when I say that slavery is and has been the history of the Negro races or of the Negro race, I allude, of course, only to the portion which has been brought in contact with other races. Oh, they don't want to talk about CRT. They want to pull all of this out of the schools. They want to try to act like we ain't nothing but black and we, that's all we are. But they know who we are. They know the origin from which the Negro. I'm talking about the Negro, y'all. If you're not the Negro, I ain't talking to you or about you. This is specifically to that people. Okay. He says, and this, it must be remembered, is the only portion which comes within the range of history. They realize we've been chased and scattered throughout time because we refuse to be according to our forefathers, according to our heritage, according to our laws, our customs, our traditions. We want to be like the Caucasians. We want to be like the Arabs. We want to be like the Africans. We want to be like everybody else other than understanding who we are within our customs and our traditions, notably known throughout history, even as the Negro. The last standing of the kingdom of Israel being the Judeans. And it's up to us as the Negro to then stand, overcome the oppression, and reinstitute the kingdom in righteousness. That's the hard part because we're still trying to wrap our head around what in the hell is righteousness. He says, of the great mass of race, he says, we can sacredly be said to know anything. He says, if they ever had the history, all memorials of it has long since perished from the earth. So they're saying, if we ever had any greatness, they made sure they erased it. They made sure they burned all the books and all the records because they said we cannot let this people rise. Everywhere we go, we're considered the enemy. Because if we rise, we rule. Even in America, they say, don't let them rise. That's a threat to national security. The government calls us a threat, but yet nobody seems to think that's a problem. You all want to go vote as if you can remove the fact within your vote that they say we're a threat to their national security. And you haven't denounced it or made them denounce it. You act as if it's cool. You turn a blind eye to it. And for that, they know you're in captivity. And for that, they treat you as if you're a slave. Tell your politicians, tell your representative to denounce the FBI for saying that we're a threat to national security. They won't do it. In fact, they uphold it. Why? Because they're getting paid. They put the money over their integrity. And y'all think that's cool, but throughout history, that's how it's been with various, members of Judas and his line and his lineage. But we also have those that overcome and stand up and overturn the corruption. And prophetically, that's what's said to happen. And they know it's coming and they're just trying to do everything they can to prevent. Don't let that Negro wake up. We got to keep them subdued. If you got to spend $1 trillion more, go print it up. Give some money to Mayweather, give some money to Oprah, give some money to Michael Jordan, give some money to this one and to that one and let them go talk and, let them listen to them and have them to put them back to sleep or to get them under control. Whatever it costs. But here it says in Psalms, going back into Psalm right now, coming off the book for a second, in Psalm 83 and 4, He says, they have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation. Don't let them Negroes be no nation. Because if they do, they're going to rule even over us. So whatever we've had in the sense of a history, they've erased it. They've burned it. We don't know where you come from. We don't know what you are. Who is just like, well, nothing. And all of these other nations are confederate. They're in agreement. They've signed on with the corruption. Look at the Arabs. Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all those other, they done sold out. Everybody has sold out. Nobody cares with respect to what has happened to us. In fact, they say, stop complaining, stop playing the victim. But like I said, when Netanyahu and his people get to complaining and talking about what happened to them and remember this and never forget, you don't never tell them to stop playing the victim. You try to act like you got a tear in your eye. No, what happened to them is so bad. No, what happened to us is so bad because it's still happening. But they said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation. Thank you all for coming into the live. That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And that's what they did when they said, if there's any memorial or any history, he said, it's long been perished out of the earth because they said, let us cut them off. That the name may be no more in remembrance. So they removed everything and then they called us Negro. And then Netanyahu and his folks jump up and say, we the Jews. And try to ignore that there's history out there that say people converted into the heritage through Hyrcanus and through Judas Maccabees. And so going back to the book, right? Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1860. He says, when the pyramids were built, they seem to have been in the same condition of brutalism, talking about these Negroes or the Israelites, the people, because we're just hard-headed. Can't tell us nothing. Barbarism. He says, in which we find them now. We're still in a disarray. In 1860, when they wrote this, they saw us in a disarray. It's 2026 and we're still in a disarray. Arguing, fighting, can't come to a sense of understanding. That's our downfall. And they said, for them, that will be their doom. So they spend money to keep us bickering about their business, their affairs. That don't seem crazy to you? He said, without art, without science, without literature, without anything which constitute civilization, they've erased our existence. As it said in Psalms 83 and 4, let us cut them off so that they could never be remembered. Folks have a hard time now trying to remember. Who are these people? Where they come from? We don't know. They just showed up. He said, when the pyramids were built, They seem to have been, oh, okay, I read that part. So here, check this part out. If the whole central mass of the Negro race were swept away at one blow from the face of the earth, y'all look at how they talk about us in 1860, and they still feel this way today. He says civilization would receive no material wound. They say we're worthless. They felt that way about us in the 1860s. They feel that way about us now, but yet we clamor to uplift their society and to help these people. They've never denounced these thoughts. In fact, within this administration and within this society, that's how they talk. Them Negroes ain't nothing. They're inferior to us. We're going to rule over them, and we're going to push down on them even more. Take civil rights away. Take the voting rights away. Just take it all away. In fact, make it more difficult for them. Same stuff our ancestors dealt with 4,000 years ago. Same stuff that they're writing about in 1860. Thank you all for coming into the live. He says, generation after generation live and die and pass away like the grass of the field, leaving behind no memorial of their existence. And this is where we are right now today in America. We don't have anything to leave behind because we're caught up in their affairs. We've been sold an American dream that has no benefit to us. Everything that will be left behind under the class within the American dream will be for the Europeans and those that run the country. You all seem to think that you're going to have some hand in it, but they'll wipe you out of history the moment you're gone. At the right moment, you won't even exist. It'll be like you was never there and or did or contributed whatever you did. They'll make you look like them. They'll change your color. They'll give you a makeover. These words are prophetic. The biblical writings pertaining to who we are and what happened to us are prophetic. And more importantly, what we need to do to overcome. Thank you all for coming into the live. So we look at Psalms 64:2. He says, hide me from the secret counsel. So I'm coming out of the book for a second that I can tie in a biblical scripture that speaks to like what we just read. So I'm just showing you how this is all tied to the writing of the people in the Bible, which have nothing to do with your religion. Catholicism, Judaism, or Christianity, but it's truly tied to the pristine heritage of the people. That for ages and generations, it's prophesied that they would go through what they're going through. And it also tells you how they would return to greatness. Psalm 64:2. He says, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, because they just told us in Psalms 83 that they seek counsel together. They hunt our steps. But he said, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity. When you talk about these two right here, they are the workers of iniquity within the insurrection, making certain that our people stay on the bottom. Or they may give some of you a crumb that's a little bigger than the other ones, and for you, that's enough. We're in a society of crumb snatchers. And if they give you $1 million for some of you, you're like, ooh, Thank you. I ain't gonna say nothing. They give you $1 billion. Ooh, I'm gonna be real quiet. I ain't gonna help them Negroes out. No, who you say I should give my money to? Cars for Kids? Oh, okay. I should give it to United Way, or I should help this organization, that, or whoever they tell you to spend your money on. That's what you do, because you're a different type of slave. But you can't spend your money on the true liberation of your people, or else they come in and say, oh, we're going to take all that away from you. Kanye, Kyrie, Kendrick. They all had a taste of it. They tried. Kanye found out real quick. Kendrick Lamar found out real quick. Kyrie Irving found out real quick. Oprah don't say nothing. Michael Jordan done. And with that boy Nick Cannon, he found out real quick. They all thought they could use their money to then try to come back and help their people. So you better sit yourself down somewhere. And that's exactly what they went and did. He said, who wet their tongues like a sword? Netanyahu and this administration, or the Europeans in general, they talk trash about us. They wet their tongues like a sword, meaning they're not going to produce anything to help us. That's not within their interest. Everything they do is to hamper us, to keep us marginalized. And y'all say, stop complaining. Stop being the victim. Just do something. Tell that to Netanyahu and his people. Tell them to stop complaining. Tell them to stop playing the victim. He says, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows. Even bitter words. He said that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. So they're behind closed doors in secret, devising plans against the Negro, who in the eyes of God is considered to be perfect, but in the eyes of the rest of the world, we're nothing. We're the excrement at the bottom of the shoe. But they shoot in secret at these people, at my people, at the Negro, also identified as perfect. Suddenly, do they shoot at him and not fear? They don't have no worries about what they do to us. Out in the open in the streets, as they use their IDF forces on Black folks in that region, as they use their military and or police forces and FBI forces and their other agencies in America, they don't care. They don't have no regard for no law. They didn't stop the ICE stuff until the precious Europeans got slain. Outside of that, they were going hard. Before the two Europeans, you had a Negro, a melanated individual to be taken out. Ain't nobody say nothing. They don't care about us. But yet, we keep thinking we can vote to bring about change in their corrupt democracy. Oh, get it on the local level. And no, what we need to do is vote for liberation. We need to vote to be a separate people, that we can handle our affairs like they handle their affairs. We need to vote to be recognized on the global stage like the Arabs are recognized on the global stage, because we are a people still being governed and ruled by another people. He says, they encourage themselves in an evil matter. Talking about these two. Talking about the rulers of the world. They encourage themselves in evil matters. And if they did not, we wouldn't see the world in the state of decline that we see it. But these writings are true. And they coincide with what I'm reading out of the book from 1860, Southern Literary Messenger. So let me finish this and then we can get back to the book. So they encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune the laying of snares privately. They set traps for us privately through their policies and through their procedures. And then they try to act like, I didn't know, I don't know. I mean, well, it's policy, it's procedure. I mean, hey, that's just what it is. It's not biased. It's not set towards you. I mean, it's anybody, but we know. They say, who shall see them? See, they do these things and they think they don't have to answer to anybody because they're in power. And this is what you see with the Netanyahu and the Trump when it comes to even international law, as they've put it out that it don't apply to them. Who see them? They say, don't know. Netanyahu, the world court. America and Trump, the United Nations, y'all ain't nobody. That apply to everybody else. Don't come to us with that. We use that for the other races, more specifically for the Negroes, for those that have no power. We use these things to control them. You don't use that to control us. We put the policies and procedures in place. You follow what we say. Their law has a respectful person. The law within righteousness, it don't matter if you have Epstein money. If you offend the principle, you have to deal with the judgment. Thank you all for coming into the live. He said they search out iniquities. They look for evil to afflict the people, more specifically, in this case, because I'm talking about my people, which they've identified as the Negro. They search out ways to keep us. And y'all say, stop complaining. Y'all say, man, you got it good in America. We're still in captivity. That's not good. But some of you, because you got that gift, like I said, you got a good job, you got a house, you got a car, you got money, you can go and move. Y'all think that's freedom. But in Ecclesiastes 7:7, it tells you that oppression should make you mad. But they say when they start giving you all these things, they say those things destroy your mind. It's like it makes you forget that they're doing what they're doing, because within the abusive relationship, it's like they abuse you and then they turn around and give you something and you feel like they love you. Oh, well, maybe they didn't mean it. That's the nature of an abuser or an abusive relationship. It's just happening on a grander scale. But here you say they search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart, he said, is deep. He said, God. Now, when we talk about what's written within in the law and how we're going to rise up, he says, and God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Now, this is metaphorically speaking, but you should come to understand they're not going to get away. It may look like they have an advantage right now, but they're going to meet their demise prophetically. There's no escape. He says, suddenly shall they be wounded. Because the world cannot continue to function under this corruption. Suddenly, they have to be stopped. He says, so shall they make their own tongue fall upon themselves, meaning all of these policies, all of these procedures, all of these lies, and all of this hijacking of different people's heritage and running around like they the Indians and the $5 Indians and running around like, they're the tribe of Judah and their God's chosen. It's like their tongue is going to fall upon themselves, the lies that they have inherited. That's going to be the thing to incriminate them. That is the thing that incriminates them. He says, all that see them shall flee away, meaning nobody's going to give them the attention that they're being given now. They're going to be seen like the Negro is seen, and that's what they're so afraid of. That they're going to be seen as nothing or as if they're invisible. But this is what is expressed. He says, and all men shall fear. What are all men going to fear? And shall declare the work of God. Meaning, when they fall, and the new rise in power based on a people that have been oppressed for ages and generations come to stand to say never again, no more will this type of rule be in the earth through oppression. They're going to fear. Oh, it's a fear. Public Enemy did that, fear of a black planet, meaning fear of the Negro rule. They call that the Dark Ages, the medieval, and anytime we're ruled is dark and evil. But for us, when they rule, it's evil. But we do understand now through the way they've dealt within corruption that the writing says their world within wickedness is going to end. So now the turn is that the world has to be uplifted in righteousness to thrive. The world is going to heal just like the people are going to heal. The trees, the water, the air, everything is going to be refreshed. But they have to be suddenly stopped according to what's written in order for this transition to take place. And a new rulership within the seat of government over the world, a new superpower has to come into position and or place. Holding the standard of righteousness, you all, not another sense of policies and procedures. And no, we have to look at the standard of antiquity that have been written for ages and generations that we should live by as we've ignored these things to accept the traditions of men, to accept the precepts and principles of men, denying the standards of antiquity supported within righteousness that have no respect for your person, real accountability. Y'all don't want to talk about that. He says, for they shall wisely consider of his doings, talking about righteousness. All men shall fear and shall declare the work of God, talking about the law. And they shall wisely consider his doings, meaning the ways of righteousness. No different than we ignore right now the ways of corruption and we try to make it normal. So going back to the book, I think I got 1 or 2 more pages. But coming back to the book, Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33, 1860. We're in the chapter, the very first chapter, the Negro Races. They were talking about us in 1860. It's amazing. They know who we are on the ancient walls of Egypt, in slavery to the Egyptians, to the Persians, to the Greeks, to the Romans, but we don't seem to understand. We are that people of antiquity. We are that people that are called to rule the earth in righteousness. And because we've been given that position and or place, everybody else is fighting to make certain we never rise to that status and or position, because then that means they can no longer have their way. Pilfering, destroying, lying, cheating, stealing, corruption, taking advantage of people. They don't want that to end. He says, wholly destitute of inventive genius. This is how they talk about us, like we don't know how to do nothing, but you all know how much we've invented right here in America. But what happens, because we're in captivity and because we've dealt with slavery, the Europeans come in and they take our inventions and they put their names on it and they make it like they did it. So that's all a part of them erasing our ingenuity and trying to make it look like somebody else did it. Say anybody did it, but the Negro did it, because he ain't nothing. He blind, he deaf, he's sottish, he ain't got no sense. But you all know how intelligent we are. He says they originate nothing for themselves. This is how they talk about us. Like we didn't build, within the Niles of Egypt and within their culture. Like we weren't responsible, for those monuments of, amazement. Same thing here in America. Designing cities and street lights and creating other inventions that they say we ain't done nothing. Because they swoop in and they take it because we don't have any strength. He says, in the long duration of Negro life, not one single ray of civilization has appeared to lighten its gloomy past. And the reason being is because we've been chased throughout all history. All the other races and all the other nationalities, everybody has had a hand in chasing us all throughout history. And they've made an assertive effort to erase us from the annals, to make us feel as if we're nothing and will never be nothing. I'm just going through the psychology of how it's written and what has happened. Going through the records and the writings that a number of you have not been privileged to. He says, on the other hand, highly imitative, they seem capable when brought in contact with superior races, meaning we copy everything they do. Y'all know better than that. Look at the trends in the people around the world, even, from that thing in hip hop, how you got the K-pop and everybody want to do what the Negroes are doing. But they try to make you think you ain't done nothing. You have no influence. The only difference is we don't control it, because even through all of that, they get the benefit. When you talk about the hip hop and the music and the entertainment, yeah, we out there dancing and, whatever, acting and whatever, but they get all the reward. We get to come back and tell the stories how somebody took our money. Look at what they did to Floyd Mayweather. He got what he deserved, because he left his people and he stood up there and tried to act as if he cared so much about this people. And he was always going to be with the state of Israel. Then they turned around and they robbed him. They took his plane, and, all these bad things started happening to him. And now look at him. That's what's thought to have said to have taken place between him and his managers but that's what they get. He says, with superior races of adopting their culture up to a certain point. This is what I'm saying. We've adopted the culture. When we were in Greek captivity, we adopted the culture of the Greeks. Roman captivity of the Roman, Persian of the Americans. Wherever we are, we adopt their culture, not understanding that's the reason we're marginalized. We keep adopting these cultures, and right now we've adopted the American way. And we're trying to tell people you're black, the black vote matters, and your vote matters, and go out and vote and Democrat, and we're going to, take control of the government. You'll never have control. Their democracy is not set up for you to rule. And if it ever looked like you are going to have a position of rulership within their democracy, they're going to flip the standards and make certain you never get that advantage. But it says we continue to adapt to other people's culture to certain points. He said, from this source and from the source only have they derived whatever of culture they have possessed during the 3,500 years that we have their history. So he's saying for 3,500 years, even 4,000 years of history, he's saying all we have for the Negro is slavery, captivity. So he said that must be the only position God made them to be our doormat. The Persians had them at one time. The Philistines had them at one time. The Romans had them. The Greek had them. The Arabs had them. It's like they just pass us around. They said that must be the reason. He said the highest point in the scale of civilized being to which they have attained during all this period has been in slavery to white races. Amen. This is what's written in 1860. A part of that history that they're not really sharing with you. This book is Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33, first chapter, The Negro Races. He says, this is a great point in their history. He said, left to themselves, y'all pay attention. Left to themselves, they accomplished nothing. That's how they think about us. And you all think they care about you. They feel like without us, y'all ain't nothing. And a number of you feel like you won't be successful without them. So you all are made for each other. But there are a number of us, we sick of it. He says they accomplish nothing, make no progress. And see, we make no progress because we continue to adopt to their culture, to their precepts, to their customs, to their traditions. We refuse to stand on a separate standard and away from them. He says, and not only so, but after having imbibed from the superior races as much of civilization as their nature are acceptable of, they seem incapable of retaining it, except under the protection, guidance, and tutelage of those from whom they receive it. Ooh, you all don't see that today within this society, that folks feel like if they don't give us privileges, civil rights, if they don't give us privileges within the right to vote, then we can't do nothing. This was written in 1860, you all. It's a mirror as to what's still happening now today to the Negro then, to the Negro now. In the past and still in the present. In the past, which would now be the future, is the present, is still happening now. Same people, just different faces, same energy. But y'all trying to act like it ain't so. Go vote. Go vote. The voting is going to change it. What's going to change it is when we stop trying to be like them, when we realize we need to establish our working body within our heritage, like all the other nationalities and or nation states and or people. We're the only one that want to be like everybody else and don't come to understand that's our downfall. He says, as soon as the protection, guidance, and tutelage are for any reason withdrawn, like if they stop caring for us, he says, from that moment, the Negro relapses progressively and speedily into his original and native brutalism. They think we're savages. And they say, if we don't treat them bad, they're going to treat themselves bad. So they need us to manage how bad we treat them to prevent them from being bad to themselves or being bad to others. If we leave them to themselves, they're going to return to their original native brutalism. He says, Moreau in ancient and St. Domingo in modern times are notable instances of this fact. Now, here's the thing. When I did research on the St. Domingo, and as he talk about if they leave us alone, we're going to turn to brutalism, St. Domingo is Haiti. And the brutalism that he's talking about is how the Haitians or the Negroes, you see, that's the other thing. He just told you that the Haitians are the Negroes based on St. Domingo. But we don't see ourselves, as this same people. But they're classified as the Negroes. Right? But they fought back. They kicked the French out and they got their independence. So that's what he's talking about when he said they revert to the brutalism, meaning if we leave them alone, you all, they're going to rise up. So if we don't stay on the point of oppressing them, they're going to rise up and remove us from power like they did in St. Domingo, which is Haiti. So I have to reference in 1795 under the Treaty of Versailles, Spain ceded the entirety of the island to France. Saint Domingo, which is now called Haiti. He said this set the stage for the Haitian Revolution, where enslaved people overthrew the French rule, established independence, an independent nation, of Haiti in 1804. That's what he mean. If you leave them alone, they're going to rise up and they're going to kick you out. This is why America says, don't let them Negroes wake up. They say it's a national threat to our security if they come together. They're going to realize all that we've done to them, and we might get that eviction notice that the French got. Going back to the book, he says, in view of the facts, let me see where I'm at. All right, I'm coming up on the last page, you all. Thank you all for coming to the live. I say tap the screen. That part don't cost nothing. Right? That's how you show your support for the live. Share the live, repost the live. If you've missed any of this, and as I said, I'm reading from the Southern Literary Messenger, volume 33, 1806, I believe. Right? And the chapter that I'm reading from is the Negro Races. If you missed it, if you missed anything, if you want to go back, because we talked about Negro land and the 1729 map of the Negro land and how the kingdom of Judah was placed, in that map. If you missed it, I'm going to put it up on the YouTube channel. You can find the link on this page right here, the TikTok page, right under where it says Saturday at 11. Click that link, subscribe to the channel. When I'm done, I'll post it so you can go back and look at it, share it with your families, whatever you missed. You can even go get this book, because for what I'm telling you, they'll mess around and tell you none of it is true on ChatGPT and or, the internet, because that's what they do after we start bringing out these records of antiquity. They start trying to tell you the book don't exist, the author don't exist. It's like none of it, exists, and they try to make it hard for you to find it. Okay, he says, in view of the facts I have developed, the argument becomes exceedingly simple and brief. We have the history of the Negro for at least 3,500 years. And I said before that, he also factored the 4,000 years, right? He said during the whole of this period, the central mass race, has remained barbarian, from which it is to be inferred that they will remain so for the future under the same circumstances. So they say we're nothing. They say we're barbaric because we rebel to the oppression. That's very much similar to what happened within the state of Israel. You have a people within Gaza and within Palestine, they get tired. They get tired of being pushed around and, things happening, to them. And then when you retaliate, they say, oh, he attacked me, she attacked me. But you make no reference to what you've been doing all this time and all these years. You try to act like they just up out the blue, but that's how they feel about the Negro. They say, if we leave him alone, he's going to resort to coming after us for all that we've done. So he says, where was I? They will remain so for the future under the same circumstances, and the conclusion forces itself upon us that a race which for 3,500 years, talking about the Negro, he says this race for 3,500 years has made of itself not a single step in civilization is incapable of civilization. So they're saying we don't deserve nothing but to be oppressed. I don't know if you all agree with that, or not. If you truly understand what they're insinuating and why they're moving the way they're moving in 2026 to gain even more control over the Negro, to oppress him even more, like you've had too much freedom, too much liberty. You all are starting to get beside yourself. We need to show you who got the strong hand. He says, but, and I'm coming to the end right here. You jump down. It's the last part for the book, talking about Southern Literary Messenger, Volume 33, 1860. In that first chapter, the Negro Races, he says, but it pleased God. This is what the white folks say. God want them Negroes to be our slaves. Everybody's doormat. He said, but it pleased God in his own good time to raise, elevate, and civilize the European. He said in his own good time, because there was a time when the European was not of that greater stature, but they try to act like they've always been, but he's letting you know, soft words. And you also would have to know this applies to the blessing that was given to Esau, how he would rule and break the yoke over his brother for a period in time. And he would conquer. He would live by the sword. He said, in his own good time, elevate and civilize the European. Do y'all know who civilized the European? Huh? Better tell the truth and shame the devil. Tell the truth, shame the devil. The Europeans didn't civilize themselves. Oh, but he don't talk about that part in this book. So, well, first of all, we civilized the Europeans. We gave them the understanding. And then they turn around and act like we ain't done nothing. He says, so it is argued we have the same reason to hope and believe that when the time shall have arrived, he will raise, elevate, and civilize the Negro. Let me read that again. But it pleased God in his own time to raise, elevate, and civilize the European. So it is argued we have the same reason to hope and believe that when the time shall have arrived, he will raise, elevate, and civilize the Negro. I get it, because we act like a doggone fool. But in the writings, we are going to elevate. And when we do, it's going to be to rule the world in righteousness. They won't have rulership, and we won't share within rulership. That one that you call Jesus Christ, he's not white with blonde hair and blue eyes. He's a Negro. He's from the tribe of Judah. Judah is in Negro land. The map is 1729. The kingdom of Judah was there. So he can't be blonde-haired and blue-eyed. And y'all say, oh, that don't matter. Oh, it does matter. Because the rulership of the world is going to depend on this Negro. That's what you call him now. That's what they call him. That's what they call us. And they've come to realize that same people that was enslaved 3,500, 4,000 years ago within Egypt is right here in America. That's what I just read out of this book from 1860. If you missed it, I'll post it on the YouTube channel. As soon as I'm done here, I'll let it render, put it right up there so you can get it. The link to the YouTube channel is right on my page. You look up on this TikTok channel where it says Saturday, 11 o'clock. Click that link, subscribe to the channel, then you can get this. In fact, you can see what we talked about this morning because this is part 2. Right? So he just said, that the European was elevated and civilized. So now they thinking God's good time, the Negro gonna be elevated and civilized. But what he's trying to say is the Europeans are gonna civilize us. That's laughable. You go to Daniel 14:7, and this is the last verse, and I'm done. Thank you all for coming into the live, for sharing the live, for reposting it, for tapping the screen, for all the love and everything. Appreciate it. He says in Daniel 4:17, he says, this matter is by the decree of the watchers. Those of us that are paying attention to prophecy, those of us that are watching what's in the law, we meditate on it day and night. He says, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, those that understand what's going to happen to the heathen and how the world within corruption has to come to an abrupt stop. He says, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High rule in the kingdom of men and give it to whomever he will. This part. And set up over it the basis of men. And I'll end with that. Because right now the world has been given to the European for rule, and they are the basis of men. And they think they can civilize somebody. When in fact, you were the ones being civilized. So here we are talking about the races, talking about the Negro races of antiquity and how they changed the name. The Judeans are identified as the Negro. The Negroes aren't Egyptian. They aren't of Ham, the progenitor of the dark races. We got all of this in the conversation. You go back and you can look at it. So I'm not going to belabor and drag it on you all. Like I said, thank you for coming into the live. And if you decide you want to go back and capture all of this and get the name of the book and the resources that, I've gone through, look at my page right under where it says Saturday at 11 a.m. Click the link to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to post it up on that channel. The book we read from today, the Southern Literary Messenger, the 33rd volume, 1860. The opening of the book, page 1, you all. He's talking about the Negro races. And he's making the comparison as to how the Negroes are the Judeans, are the slaves that are even in America. And with that, I appreciate your time. Hopefully, this has been educational, mentally stimulating. I appreciate you all for coming, and hanging out with me. All right. And I'll tell you, the true children of Israel, they're still out there. Don't let Netanyahu and them fool you. And for the other Negroes, as they say, that's right here in America, if you're not a Negro, this conversation not for you. Don't worry about it. And just remember, you can't be a Negro and something else, an Egyptian, because they've identified the Negro to be of a different caliber of people. Although within the kingdom of Israel, you have the other tribes and or groups of people, but the writing within God's word said Judah is going to be at the forefront and take care of his brothers, his family, the kingdom. So if y'all mad, you mad at God himself within the writing of the heritage. So this conversation was for you, Judah, the Negro that has been scattered abroad and taken advantage of and enslaved and in captivity. Although the entire kingdom has been in captivity, but let's remember, as I said, I'm not going to belabor the point, but that northern kingdom, they've been gone. They've been into it. We were the last to be chased out of West Africa that they called Negro land. We were the last to be chased out as we were scattered abroad and brought into this region. Not everybody, but that Negro, y'all, he different. They know he different. And they do everything they can to keep him oppressed. And they understand, as long as we continue to try and want to be like them in their culture, we'll never have any progress. I'm going to end with that as I say shalom.